Hello, everybody. This is the Between the Points podcast here, and I'm sitting here with Noah Phillips. He's a PhD candidate, and he talks about the mental game in tennis and has some really great tips. And I thought it'd be really fun and interesting to bring Noah on and just talk the mental game and geek out on it because that's what I like to do, and and to help you with your tennis game overcome those mental strategies and give you some new tools and everything like that. So Noah, how are you? Welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I'm grateful that you're here and grateful that you had the time to get out here. Maybe Noah, you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your background for people that are listening, people that are watching, anything that you'd want to share with them about you and your journey along the way.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost, I've been a competitor all my life, right? My biggest passion in life has been competing in things, sort of testing my ability, see how I stack up against others. Um, so I've competed in tennis, of course. I've been in rock climbing, even like chess and competitive video gaming I've competed in across my life. And so I sort of took that interest of building skill, expertise, and sort of optimizing performance. And then eventually I took that into graduate school where, as you know, I've been studying cognitive science. I've been studying skill acquisition, performance optimization for a number of years now in my PhD that I have just a couple months left. So that's exciting. And then, yeah, ultimately, what my other biggest passion in life, right, has been the actual coaching side of it. So I really love coaching people through not just the physical side of the sports they compete in, but also, like you mentioned, the mental side, because I think it's a very underlooked aspect by a lot of people. Yet at the same time, it's so vitally important to people's performance, especially in the long term, right? Because we sort of reach a ceiling of our physical performance to a degree, but there's always room to grow mentally, right? And so that's, I think, the highest sort of return on investment area that we have. And so it's been a great pleasure of mine to be able to work with athletes on that.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree 100%. It's definitely one of the underlooked parts of athleticism or performance. And I do think there is a bit of a shift. And I think due to social media and like the internet, that people are starting to recognize that. I mean, you got Iga, you got all these other players that are looking for performance coaches, sports psychologists to help them along the way. So it's making it more acceptable, more as part of the norm, part of the team. Tell me, Noah, why do people get nervous and tight on the tennis court?
It's a great question. I think it all comes down to the associations that we've built up through our life, right? So I don't know if you've seen the famous experiment with babies and snakes, but basically they put babies in a room with snakes safely, and they see how the babies react to something that most people would be scared by and feel danger around. And the famous finding from this experiment was that the babies, they're not scared of the snakes because they've never learned that association between snakes and danger. And so the idea is that there's so many things, as humans, we're naturally pattern recognizers, right? And so we draw these associations, these patterns between experiences and emotional reactions. When if you sort of take a step back and analyze things maybe more logically, try and take a step back from the emotional response, you can realize that a lot of these responses aren't, you know, truly natural to the circumstance, but rather the learned association. So people, in life tend to have some bad experiences around those moments where we're feeling anxious and nervous and have to compete and maybe something goes wrong. That becomes a negative experience for us. Just like, if someone has a bad experience with a snake, or even they see, on TV in a movie, snakes snakes on a plane or whatever, like they'll build that negative association between a snake and danger and anxiety. And so it's the same thing when it comes to performance, right? A lot of people, when they step up, on court to start a match, they feel those nerves, they feel that physiological reaction, right? And they interpret it in a negative way because over the course of their life, they've associated that with some negative experiences. And so one of the biggest things that I teach people on that is that you can really start to reinterpret your body's own physiological signals, not as a danger signal that something bad is happening, there's something to worry about or be anxious about, but rather your body is like, it knows it's in performance mode, right? And it has to gear up to fire on all cylinders. And so if you can start to sort of reinterpret your body's own signaling as a good thing, a thing that means you're getting ready to go rather than this fear of danger, I think that's one of the most important mindset shifts that athletes can make, is to know that, that worrying, anxiety, that's a sort of a learned association and not necessarily something inherent to competition.
These feelings that we have, they're normal, they're learned. What can we do to, start changing that idea that these feelings are bad, or maybe what can we do to make them reframe them and believe that they're actually helping us?
Definitely. Yeah. So the first step is, education, in the sense that getting the knowledge of knowing that the signals aren't necessarily bad, learning, that about the associations, that they're not necessarily, you know, dangerous or you're worrying. I think the other critical component that I'm sure you're familiar with is to sort of help facilitate yourself to be in a more performative state. You really want to have routines built up, right? So you want to feel like things are familiar. You want to build sort of this performance routine, performance zone that you can sort of snap into, right, when you need to. And so a lot of that has to do with building those routines, and critically, you don't want to be figuring things out on the fly, right? You don't want to be in a situation where you don't know what to do. You want to have some sort of pre-planned, pre-structured response routine ready to go based on, being in a particular situation. So whether that's, your little routine you go through right as you're stepping up to start the match, you want to have that sort of pre-planned. Whether it's what you do when you make a mistake and you need to reset mentally, you want to have that pre-planned, stuff like that. Responding to, maybe a bad line call or some of those things that maybe you can't control. You don't want to be figuring things out on the fly. You want to have a structured response ready to go, so you don't have to like waste brain power or effort trying to figure out what do I do in this moment. I think that can really help people, build that performance zone that they can more easily snap into when they need to.
Yeah, yeah, I agree 100%. You just said something about the things that we can't control. You talk about that a lot.
Hmm.
Can you like elaborate on that? What's the deal with like worrying about things we can't control, and what should we do differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. At the heart of the human condition, right? People spend a lot of time and energy worrying about things that they can't control, and that's why, as I'm sure you know, a lot of things that we're teaching people, they go so far beyond just the tennis court, right? They're really fundamental life perspectives that can really help us in all areas. So I think it's just another reason why the things we're doing, it can be so important and so helpful for people. Um, but yeah, as far as sort of what we can do to help reframe our thinking on, as you've heard me say, controlling the controllables, right? So being able to identify what really is within our control, and then what can we do to actually affect that. So yeah, so I think probably the one of the biggest things that people can work on is the concept of growth mindset, right? So being focused on the process and not the results, not the outcome, right? So learn to fall in love with the process itself, know that you're doing the best things that you can, making the right choices, and putting your effort into the things you can control. And, the results, the outcome, there's just so much of that that is not under your control. You can't control your opponent, how they show up. Maybe your opponent, they're playing the best, it's the best day of their whole life, you can't control that. You can only control how you respond. And so again, the biggest key to that is just anchoring your fulfillment, your satisfaction to the process itself, knowing that you're making those right choices, doing the right things, and I think that's how people can really start to focus on the controllables and not hopefully waste as much time and thought worrying about the other things that they can't control.
Okay. Yeah, I totally get that. Now, all right. So our society is results focused, grades starting from school, right? What grades did you get, right? And then it's when you start talking to like tennis players, what are their first questions? Did you win? Did you do this? How do players start to become and believe that the process and become more process oriented versus outcome oriented when everything is like telling them that results is the only thing that matters?
Yeah, such a great question, and it's so true that the world is not built in a way that often enough rewards process over outcome. So I totally agree. I think it's the sort of thing that you can kind of fake it for a little bit. If you're solely outcome focused, you can make it for a while, but ultimately in the long term, it's always the people that really, fall in love with the journey rather than the destination that in the longest term are the ones that reach the greatest heights. So as far as what we can do to actually affect that, it can be really tough, but a lot of reps of focusing on things you can control, sort of taking almost like a mental inventory of analyzing situations. When you have those emotional responses, when the negative self-talk starts creeping in, when you start to get critical of yourself, really, taking a second, pause, understand what happened that is making you feel that way, right? And sort of, as best that you can, try and analyze it objectively, right? Like what really happened that is making you feel that way, and why is it making you feel that way? And because something that I think is also core to what I teach people is that we can't judge ourselves for the emotions that we have. Emotions are, that's what being human is, right? What we can control, controlling the controllables, is the way that those emotions cause us to respond, right? So I think it's a mistake to try and bottle up and shut down your emotions. I think you should allow yourself to experience the emotions, to feel the things, the highs and lows of being a human. But you can sort of choose how much you allow that to affect the way you respond to situations. So again, when we're in situations like that where things go wrong, we start to feel bad, being able to pause, analyze what happened, how it's making us feel, and why it's making us feel that way, and then being able to understand that, well, if it's not within our control, if it's not our fault, if we didn't do anything to cause that, then it's okay to feel that emotional response, but understand that it shouldn't shift, shouldn't change how we move forward. And as long as, again, as we know that we're making the right choices, taking the right steps forward, then that's ultimately what matters.
Yeah, totally agree. At what and how, at what, or how does a sports psychologist or a mental performance coach, how does that person come into play for the athlete. What can a sports psychologist like yourself help the athlete accomplish that they can't by themselves, or can they? I don't know. I mean, like, what part of the puzzle are the sports psychologists and the mental performance coaches?
Yeah, great question. Yeah. Again, I think it comes back to the like what I was mentioning earlier. One of the biggest parts is just having that structured system put in place, right?
Mm.
So that when you're in a situation, you know what to do. You don't have to think about figuring out how to respond. You have something sort of built. And so I think that's one of the best roles that you or I can serve people is, helping them build out that system, giving them the tools, the proven frameworks and the strategies, all that, teaching people, the proven ways to respond to these moments, and sort of giving them like the toolkit of little things that they can pull out when they need. And then obviously, because anytime we're talking about mental anything, things are going to be so personalized to the individual, right? It's never going to be a cookie cutter, one size fits all approach. And so working with athletes, one on one, we can really help refine those tools, refine those routines over time to make sure that they're, fully customized, personalized to the individual so that they are as effective as they can possibly be. So, working with athletes over time to build out their systems, their responses to situations, and to continue to refine them over time to make sure that they're most effective for them. I think um, that's one of the biggest roles as a coach. And then obviously, as we go through time, when things come up, if there's something that a new situation comes up that they weren't prepared for, being able to talk with them in real time and develop those situations as they move forward. I think that's the ongoing support as a coach is ultimately one of the biggest roles that a sports psychologist, a mental game coach, can provide
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah, I that's interesting you say that, and I totally agree. Like, just being able to adapt, right? Like, the mental game is so individual, right? And then working with that person, and yes, having a system, but then being able to, tweak it a little bit, right? Like, and if we can even compare it to a forehand, right? On the backswing, players have different types of backswing, right? Some people like a bigger backswing, some people like a smaller backswing, and I think working with individuals, different things work for different people, and kind of being in that framework, and then adapting to that. I think as coaches, that's like, for me, that's super fun, and loving to finding way to adapt to that person. All right, so let's get into some like actual situational uh, 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 situations on the tennis court. And maybe you can share some of your best tips on how the players that are listening, what they can do to handle these situations. Okay, first one. You're up 40-30, and it's match point, right? Or it's match point. You just having a tough match, and whew, everything just starts coming at you. You start thinking about don't lose. And you start shaking, and you've lost 5 matches in a row, and this is match point. What do you recommend? What's something that they can do just to kind of snap him?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so one of the core tools that I teach people, I call it the three-step mental reset, because ultimately, like you were describing, one of the most valuable tools that we can have is, the reset button to no matter what's happening, being able to switch back into that, peak performance mode. Um, so the three-step mental reset, it's built on, you know, cognitive science, performance physiology, sports psychology, all that, sort of refined into a neat little package that you can implement in 30 seconds or less, and help you sort of get back in the zone when you need it. So step one, release. So when you're feeling those emotions, when you're in that situation where things start to get away from you a bit, step one is just to release. So often, that's like just take a big deep breath, inhale, exhale. Just like have some sort of physiological release of tension, all that. The way that I teach people, you don't have to worry too much about like, counting, the number of seconds, inhale, exhale, box breathing, all that. I think most importantly, just, take a nice deep breath. Don't think about it too much. Just have something that gets out some of that physical tension. Step two is to recenter. So the way that I teach people that is have, some sort of mantra or like hype phrase that, gets you back in the zone a bit. Obviously, again, this is going to be very hugely based on the individual, but some people might say, back to work. Some people might say next point. Some people might say, lock in, something like that. But it has to be something non-judgmental, right? Don't be like, snap into it. Like, what's wrong with you? That's never a good, affirmation phrase to use. So something, neutral, and certainly also not something like you have to win this, right? Because that further, just adds pressure to yourself and is not good. So something neutral that sort of helps you stay locked in. I really like having people actually say it out loud because there's a lot of science about sort of multimodal perception where by saying something out loud, not only are you're like physically feeling yourself say it, but you're actually hearing yourself say it out loud. And so that like, multiple streams of perceptual input further helps, cement things as you're perceiving them. So that's step two, to recenter by saying your sort of reset cue. And then third is to refocus. And so that's where we pick, one target focus to think about, or even one physical sensation works well for a lot of people. So whether that is, feeling the seams on the tennis ball, just like anchor to something physical, a sensation, feeling the grip of your racket, the sensation of your feet on the ground, being able to refocus, lock into something physical, like a physical sensation, it sort of helps strike that balance between overthinking, because we don't want to be too, overthinking, overanalyzing, stuff like that. But we also can't just turn our brain off, right? We have to be in the moment. So we have to have some way to snap back to the right amount of like being on, but still being present in the moment. And so that's what I found across years is that the best way to do that is really to anchor to something physical, like a physical sensation first, and then pick that, single crucial objective, whether it's eyes on the ball or, something about your footwork. Really focus on one thing and make that your goal going to the next point. And so those three things together, the release, the recenter, the refocus, that sort of is one of those routines that you can build out for yourself, personalize it over time, and just have it in your back pocket, ready to go whenever you need it. And gives you that structure and that, the framework that's built out ready for you, that I think, especially as people continue to refine it and, make it personalized to them over time, it can really be effective for helping people snap back into performance mode and, get out of their own head and get back in the zone where their peak performance lives.
Awesome. That's a great three-step process there to kind of get yourself back into that moment. I kind of like thinking because another video that you posted the whole like Medvedev smashing rackets or a bunch of videos about anger on the tennis court. Why are we getting angry on the tennis court? It's just a game.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think ultimately it comes down to a mismatch between expectations and reality, right? There's this sort of school of philosophy that says the root of anger is optimism, right? Because if you never had any hope in things turning out well, then what would you ever be angry about, right? You know, if you expect everything to be terrible, then nothing's going to surprise you when it's not good, right? And I think it's, you know, it's an interesting perspective to think about. And what the key lesson is that when we have these expectations of ourselves that can be so high, um, when we're in a situation where the reality maybe doesn't quite meet that expectation, uh, it can have this really negative effect on us. And some people will sort of interpret that as anger. Some people will be sad. Some people will just be really anxious. But ultimately, if we can, again, anchor ourselves to the process and not the result, because as long as, you know, you'll hear me say this 1,000 times to people, as long as we know the steps that we're taking are what we need to be doing, then, you know, what's the point of anger? You know, it's like if you're angry about something, if you're not happy about the things you're doing, then change what you're doing, right? But if you're not happy about the result, then that's not something you can control anyway. So why are you angry about it, right? And I know it's not as simple as just, well, just don't be angry, but ultimately it's that mismatch, I think, between expectations and the reality. And you know, it's all the shoulds, right? I should be winning this. I shouldn't be, you know, missing the shot. It's like there really is no should. There is where you are, you know, and where you can be, but the expectation that, you know, we shouldn't be missing these things, we shouldn't be making mistakes. It's like we're all human, right? You know, no matter how good you are, even the pros, like people make mistakes. That's just, you're never going to eliminate making all mistakes. So if like your primary goal for improvement is to stop making all mistakes, you know, that's not going to get you as far as you want to be. That's why it's so crucial to be able to build out those systems of being able to respond to mistakes when they happen, because they're always going to be there. We're never going to eliminate them entirely. So I think, yeah, better managing, you know, our expectations, knowing that, understanding we're human, understanding we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And that's why we build out these systems to help us respond. I think that's one of those things that can help people not feel angry or sad or anxious, because they sort of ground themselves back in, you know, more realistic expectations, and more importantly, give themselves the slack of just being human and understanding that we're measured not by our perfection, but the way that we respond to things, and you know, get back up and keep fighting.
I always think about I don't know, I forget which Batman it was, but it was a Batman movie, and I can't remember, but like the son was like had fallen down or something like that, and I think the dad was like, "Do you know why we fall?" And the son was like, I don't know why, Dad. It's like so that we can learn to get up, so we can learn to get stronger. And I totally agree. And just realizing that hey, these are all lessons and learning opportunities for us to get better and improve. And really, it's the journey, because you know life comes and it goes, it keeps ticking, and it doesn't stop for anybody. You know, and it takes time, because when you're younger, obviously you don't think that way. But when you get a little
Yeah.
older, you start to see that just being out here, just waking up and having the opportunity to improve is actually the gift. It's actually the whole that's it, you know, because there's so many people that don't get a chance to wake up. Um, all right, so what can an athlete, a tennis player, do after the match to help them uh, evaluate their match so they keep coming back and improving?
That's another great question. Um, yeah, you know, having and again, having a system to sort of extract the key insights from the things that happened, I think is the biggest thing. Because, you know, whatever happens to you, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, being able to extract those lessons and learn something from it, and help it, you know, it guides you forward, right? It informs where to go next, where to put focus on training or adjustments. So I think sort of that framework that I was mentioning a bit earlier, where you pause, you take a second, you think about things objectively, take a step back, and after the match, for instance, think back, or if you have film, go back and rewatch. What were some of the key moments that happened, whether they were good or bad, and really analyze why they happened, what the real effect of it was. Was it just within that one point, or was it sort of a momentum shift overall that caused a swing? And yeah, analyze it objectively and understand why it happened. And then if there was something wrong, if something bad happened, really think about what could you have done. Was there anything in your control, or was it really just a bad break? Was it just something that you couldn't control? And if you can do that, right, any especially with the mistakes or the bad things, if any mistake, any setback that happens to you, you can extract one lesson, one insight, one point of knowledge that you gain. That ideally, if we can never make the same exact mistake twice, then that's great. We're gonna get really good really fast, right? And in reality, it takes probably a few reps of making the same mistake a few times to really internalize the change that we need to make. But again, from a long-term sort of mindset shift perspective, if we can think about setbacks, mistakes as those opportunities for growth, those learning moments, then it's like, oh, I love mistakes. I love when bad things happen because the more bad things happen, the more I learn and grow and the better I become overall. So I think, yeah, but when something bad happens, don't just, close your eyes and forget about it. If you can, whether it's during the match or maybe more likely after the match, really go back and think things through and think not just about what happened, but what could you have done, what could have changed, and how that could have affected the overall outcome. I think is a great starting point for people.
Cool. Yes, I love that. Yeah, just being able to see what happened and finding something to improve on after the match, and I think also just realizing that it's okay to feel, whatever you're feeling about the match. It's if you're upset about it, be upset about it. Just you know, don't hold on to it too long and find the thing that you learned from it as well. That really helps me. All right. I got some rapid fire questions for you, just kind of so we get to know you a little bit. Your favorite tennis player or couple?
I think I gotta say Federer.
Federer. Oh, yeah. Why?
I think he has an aura. I like his swagger.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. And love, I mean, did you hear the story about how when he was younger, his parents were almost going to take him out of tennis because he used to break rackets or something like that?
I did hear that. Yeah,
I
seems
think
like
they
he went
took
through a
him out
lot
for,
of growth.
yeah, took him out for like 6 months or something like that, which is cool. All right. If you were going to tell Alex Xander Zverev one thing so that he can finally win his Grand Slam, what would it be?
It's got to be worry more about the process than the Grand Slam itself. And it's not until you really stop worrying about the results that is when the results actually come, right? You have to destroy that piece of you that is really, I mean, you need drive overall, right? To motivate yourself to move forward. But I think ultimately the biggest shift people can make is focus on the process, not the result. And once you do that, the results will come along the way, but it's not the primary thing.
Agreed. Your number one favorite meal to eat before a match?
Sure, yeah. So I always love, a nice Alaskan wild sockeye salmon with maybe some maybe some rice and quinoa, some mixed vegetables, stuff like that. I heard this story. I like, they have world memory championships. Like people can, I think the way that they do it is like the the person who is fastest to memorize a whole deck of cards, like the order of all 52 cards in a deck, is the winner. And I think it takes them like 20 seconds or something. But there was this interview with, I guess, the reigning world memory champion. And one of the things that he said is that the night before a competition, he always eats this same meal, which is basically what I described, wild salmon, vegetables, and, quinoa. And apparently he's really noticed that his memory, like his actual, mental performance in the context of memory, is so much better when he has, a meal that's high in omega-3, from the salmon, has vegetables and all that. He can really sense his memory performance being better when he eats this meal, so he always has it exactly the same. And so I thought that was funny, and that's similar. I had already loved food like that, and so it was funny to hear even the world memory champ talk about how he always wants his wild salmon before the night of competition.
Yeah, I love the wild salmon. Just keeping it simple, right? Rice and some mixed vegetables. That's it. I'm
Yeah,
I'm I'm the same way for. I might do chicken too a little bit, but
yeah, for sure.
cool. All right. So Noah, where can people find you and get a hold of you and learn more about you?
For sure, yeah. So best way is probably just my Instagram page, Apex Cognition. You can find me there. Um, my DMs are always open. If people want to ask me any questions, talk through some of the things that they're going through, they have an issue they want some feedback on, or if people are interested in seeing what options I provide as far as one-on-one coaching goes, then my DMs are always open. You can always send me a message, and whether we're a good fit to work together or not, I'll always help you out with the things that you're struggling with, and give you some nice valuable insight to move forward. So that's the best way to contact me. My Instagram page, apex.cognition.
Perfect. I'll make sure to put it in the show notes and everything like that so that people can have an easy way to find you. Noah, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you talking about the mental game. Love it. Very grateful and excited about getting this out there. I hope it's going to help a lot of players. And you've been watching, you're listening to the Between the Points podcast. Have a great day out there. Reminder, check out Noah on his Instagram page. You can link up here through me. Anything else you want to share with everybody, Noah?
I think that's about it. Yeah, you can always message me with any questions you have. I'm always happy to talk.
Awesome. Have a great day, everybody. Let's get out there. Let's play our best tennis and have a blast and have fun because we're very lucky to be out there.